All right, good evening. Okay, good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order for the City of Edina Park Board for February 10th, 2015. Can we get a roll call, please, Janet?
Yep. Member McCormick? Here. Member Sella? Here. Member Segreto? Here. Member Giesecke?
Here.
Member Steele? Here. Member Jacobson? Here. Member Jones?
Here.
Member Chowdhury? Member Colwell?
Here. All right, thank you. Next is the approval of the meeting agenda. If I can get a motion, please.
Motion to approve. Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. Next is the approval of the consent agenda. If I can get a motion, please. Okay, we have a move. Second. We have a second. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, that passes. Next is the community comment section. If there's anyone out there that wishes to speak before the board, now would be the time. Seeing no one, we will move along here to reports and recommendations section. And the first item is Braemar Clubhouse interior renovations and some information for us and some goodies to look at and peruse. And Ann will take it from here.
Thank you, Dan. I just wanted to give you a quick update tonight as to where we are on our renovations at Braemar Golf Course, and just kind of an update also as to what we have going on in our entire golf operation. And I tried to catch you as you came into the meeting tonight because I had a feeling this wasn't going to show very well, and I have a feeling you're probably not seeing a really great depiction on your screens right now. But we have been working with an architect. Oh, there we go. Thank you. We've been working with Spiritus Reiners Architects and interior designers on helping us to do a interior renovation at the Braemar Clubhouse. And so I have a materials board to share with you this evening, and I'm looking for a little bit of feedback. This color scheme and product mix is going to be used for the tin fish. So the wall tiles and the accent tiles will be used behind the cooking space. And when you get down into these selections, this is the floor tile that will be used around the tin fish restaurant area. This is a walk-off mat that'll be near the entry into the new restaurant area. This is the carpet that'll be in the dining area of the clubhouse with accent carpets to match both the dining area and the banquet carpet. And this is the selection for the dance floor in the banquet space. We're also planning to renovate the restrooms that are in the hallway going towards the banquet space, and this would be the color and materials palette for that. Countertops, sink, wall tile, and floor tile. And then the last selections in the center show you the different color schemes and material selections for the rest of the spaces in the banquet area. We have hopefully a new bar that will be going in that space. This will also be the countertop for the tin fish. We are going to be lightening up. Our goal is to really provide a more updated, brighter, fresher look for the whole space. We're going to be adding some lighter acoustical tiles on the ceiling that'll help break up the dark ceiling, and also add some different accent colors on the walls and around the windows. So I know that you have in your packet a floor plan and some renderings that also show, like you can see in this, as you look in the seating area right now, this whole ceiling area is very dark, and we plan to paint that ceiling to provide a much lighter and brighter look. We also hope to remove the accordion wall that's in this space and add some French doors to be able to give some light back and forth, and to be able to open up the space to provide overflow seating into that banquet space, which we currently aren't doing. This is the rendering of what the Tin Fish restaurant space will look like. And then over here, this is the hallway as you walk down into the banquet space. This is the bar area that I mentioned. We currently have a portable bar. We're hoping to add a permanent bar in that space. And currently also we have in the banquet room and in the club room, we have big, deep soffits, and they stick out into the room, and we have uplighting that's coming out of those soffits. So we intend to remove all of those soffits and provide a much better light, a more direct light, and a much more updated look. So I would be happy to answer any questions about that, if you have any.
Just one question. Where do people sit and eat? Where would that be?
The eating area for the for the dining space is in this area, which is where it is currently. We also ordered, well, we didn't order, but we made selections for tables and chairs, which are going to be comfortable, again, much lighter, brighter, and more updated. But this is the seating area primarily for the Tin Fish.
Is there also outside seating?
Yes, there is. We have outside seating on the patio. It's a wraparound patio, and we also hope to add a patio on the north side of the clubhouse to accommodate outdoor seating for our restaurant guests as well.
That would be ground level, the patio?
It would, yes. In fact, if you were to stand right here and look to the north, there's a window, and the patio seating, there's an existing patio there right now. We would just extend that a little bit and have patio seating just immediately outside that door. Nice view of the driving range and the first tee of the golf course as well.
Do you have any plans to add artwork?
I'm sorry, Kia, I didn't hear.
Do you have any plans to add artwork?
That's a good question. It does look a little stark in here right now, and absolutely, we do intend to jazz it up in a variety of different ways. Our goal in providing the design that we did was to try to attract a wide variety of users. We want to be able to make it a pleasing experience for our regular golfers. We want to make it a friendly and inviting environment for families to come. We want people to bring their business associates to Braemar, and we also want to accommodate wedding customers and a variety of other rental clients. So our goal is to try to be as neutral as possible and be able to do things, as you're suggesting, Kia, add art and different things that can be added or taken away if it doesn't meet the need of a particular client at that time.
Anne, I had heard at one time we might do a portable dance floor. Is it now decided that the dance floor will be permanent, and is it in the same location?
Yes, we did decide to do a permanent dance floor, and from working with portable dance floors for many years at Edinburgh Park, they're a challenge. They're a big labor issue. They're a lot to take up and take down. Certainly the ability to move it around is nice, but it's a lot of work to take it up and put it down every time. So this has been a good location, so that was the recommendation that staff made based on what they hear from customers.
Has the lease with Tin Fish been finalized?
Yes, it was. In fact, that lease took effect on January 1 of this year.
And the hours of the restaurant, or are there required open hours?
They are. They do have required opening hours during the golf season, and I don't have the lease in front of me, so I can't tell you exactly, but we require them to be open a certain amount of time before the golf course opens in the morning, and then a certain amount of time after the golf course open or closes at the end of the day.
But what about during the winter?
During the winter, we will have open hours as well, and they have guaranteed us that they will be open, but we do intend to work with them as we work on our programming and find the best mix of open hours both for the Tin Fish and their business and for our staffing levels as well. But it will definitely be a year-round restaurant.
And alcohol will be served?
As it is right now, beer and wine.
Beer and wine. What about coffee during the off hours?
Absolutely. That will be available.
And the last question I have, sometimes these restaurants become kind of quasi meeting places for people who in business who don't have offices. They hang and meet their clients, which would be great. Is there wiring in case at some time, we needed to use the space for, presentations or?
Absolutely, Louise. I'm glad that you mentioned that. We are going to be putting in a brand new audio-visual system, very similar to what we have in the community room, if you're familiar with that, where we'll have screens mounted on or automatic screens that will come down, projectors mounted on the ceiling, and it'll automatically be wired. So yes, it's gonna be functioning much better than it is right now, and we will also have a new sound system in there.
Okay, thank you.
So, Ann, I remember at the public open house that we had, there was some discussion about the televisions in the Tin Fish area. What was determined on that?
We will likely have more than one television in that space. The television situation will be improved over what it is right now. I can't tell you exactly what it's going to be. I do know that the plan is to move the large TV over to the south wall. It's currently on the west wall, and we're planning on moving the larger TV over here, but I would imagine that we might add one or two more TVs as well. Another thing that we're considering is doing a closed circuit TV with the Braemar Arena. So if a parent drops a child off for practice at the arena, they could come down to the Tin Fish and watch on TV cameras what's going on in the arena and watch their child practice. So those are some things that we'll be exploring. We don't have it all set up yet, but some different things that we're going to be considering.
And when is it ready to open, or what's the timing again on it?
The Tin Fish just got their building permit today. They have all their pricing and they're ready to start construction. They're anticipating approximately a 6-week construction time, so we're hoping that we will have everything all ready to go by April 15th.
Is what we're looking at in the pictures already there? Like this picture with the orange refrigerated or
Yep. No,
shelving?
it is not. If you were to look at this space right now, it is completely blank.
Okay.
The city's responsibility in the Tin Fish portion was to do the demolition and provide them a blank space, and so this is completely free of walls and flooring right now.
So this orange compartment thing, does that relate to the furniture that has been chosen?
Honestly, I'm not sure about the orange, and I'm not sure if that's the actual color selection. I'm going to have to check on that with them.
Because it's like,
Yeah, I'm not really sure about that orange, but I will make note to ask them about that tomorrow, because no, it doesn't really seem to fit in with the rest of the color scheme.
Yeah.
But no, none of it is built yet.
I could see that would get very dated, perhaps.
Yeah. Agreed. The purpose of this cooler is to provide a grab-and-go fresh food. The Tin Fish will prepare all of the food that's going to go into that cabinet on site that day, so it's going to be fresh, ready to go, but just to provide a healthy option for golfers or non-golfers to be able to grab some fresh food and either take it to eat at Braemar or take it someplace else.
So, Ann, did you say that the colors of the wood, this isn't necessarily representing what they're actually going to look like, right?
That is correct. The in fact, I'll use this as an example. This is a much lighter depiction of what's there currently. We're trying to figure out how we can make the best use of the funds that we have without doing a complete gut of the facility. We want to try to take some of the areas of character and enhance it. And this is actually a really pretty woodwork. It's just too dark because of the dark background. But this woodwork is considerably darker. It's darker than the woodwork on the dais, in fact. So yeah, all of these colors aren't exactly what you would see. I think even this woodwork is a little bit darker than is depicted in this picture as well.
My last question about how the restaurant is being run in terms of environmental, like recycling. Are we requiring the restaurant to recycle?
We are. In fact, they use only compostable materials.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
good.
And they also do food composting as well.
Is there going to be any capability in the access of the building to be able to order food from the outside, like a window or if you wanted to come up and order from the outside without going in?
That's a great question, Sue. We're exploring a couple of things. One thing that we're going to be pursuing is adding kind of like a satellite restaurant at the driving range building. We're envisioning, like I mentioned here with the fresh food cabinet, we're envisioning taking fresh food down there so that residents would be able to bike up and grab something. Maybe they'll even have ice cream down there. So if residents want to ride their bike up or walk their dog up and go to the driving range building, they could grab some food or a beverage and sit there or take it back home. At this location, we are also going to be exploring like an app if you want to order something and then come in and pick it up, whether you're on the golf course or maybe even potentially at home. We're going to be exploring those types of either an app or a call-in and pick-up type situation. And then also here, otherwise it's basically just going to be a walk-up window. But we're wanting to explore, for those of you that have experienced the Tin Fish at Lake Calhoun, their restaurant space, their cooking and their prep space is, I would say, at least 4 times bigger here than it is there. So they're going to be able to get food out here a lot quicker than they do at the Tin Fish location at Lake Calhoun. But we certainly want to explore any efficiencies that we can.
Is Tin Fish a franchise?
It is, yes. I know of 2 other Tin Fish locations. One is in California and one is in Florida. So they have, my understanding is that they have the same recipes, but the restaurants are very different.
So how long is...
It's a 5-year lease with a 5-year option.
All right. I think that's it, Ann. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Terry Minrek with Confluence talking about the park system strategic planning process.
Do you have a PowerPoint or anything? Okay, yep, you can talk.
Can you hear me? Great. Thank you for having me here today. Terry Minark with Confluence, the lead consultant for the Parks, Recreation, and Trails Strategic Plan. I'll be going over kind of where we're at in the process. You have the outline that I've provided to Ann. She's given to you. And I'll kind of go over some of these things and where we're at and what we've done and where we're going and future steps, and then open that up for questions at the end. So the strategic plan is progressing nicely. We're currently in a stage of the plan where we're doing a lot of different things and multitasking through our various consultants. But currently we have completed the public meeting, which was held on December 18th. That was very well received. We had 40 people at the Public Works building. There was a good overview of kind of a SWOT analysis of strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities within the park system. Well attended, and a lot of great ideas came forward through that. And then we held a series of focus group meetings, individual, smaller scale groups, all the way from 2 to 10 to 20 people in these focus groups. Those included participants that were residents, community leaders, business owners, recreational providers, athletic associations, civic groups, some of the neighborhood associations, environmental organizations, departmental staff, maintenance staff, city council, executive leadership, and yourself. And as you're aware, we went kind of through an opportunities analysis, what you thought you'd like to see within the park system and where you currently thought it was at now. It was very good. There was a very broad range. If you dealt with the sporting groups, they wanted more fields and more amenities. The neighborhood groups wanted stuff related specifically to how they use the park. The maintenance group was very interesting because they saw it from a totally different side, and how things were used and how they had to maintain them. And then, of course, some of the environmental organizations and some of the other user groups had totally varying opinions as well. We've compiled a complete summary of this, which we supplied to Anne. That'll be in the final document, which I'm sure you'll see prior to it being moved forward and approved. We're currently completed a demographic and trends analysis. We're finishing up that document now, but we've compiled all the demographics for the city of Edina, which looks at age segments, income levels, race, and ethnicity. And then trending, we're looking currently at some sporting and recreational trending as well as other uses. And some of the things we're thinking about are not just the highly programmed activities, but more of the individual type activities like community gardening, kayaking, and splash pads and different things like that, and where they're going and the popularity of those activities today. The similar provider assessment we're currently looking at as well. This will give us a good idea of how you kind of rate in relationship to other areas in and around you with regards to your recreational facilities as compared to Edina, St. Louis, Eden Prairie, St. Louis Park, Minneapolis, and some of those communities, as well as the benchmark data. We're looking at cities nationally as well as regionally within the state. Cities like Maple Grove and Eden Prairie, and then more national programs that kind of compare in size to what Edina has, as well as facilities, and that'll give you a good reference mark. And what we've done for that benchmark analysis as well is to kind of take award-winning programs in other cities so that you want to see where you're at that level because you want to be kind of there or above as we move forward. Recreational program service assessment is currently going on, facility needs assessment. Inventory and analysis of parks is almost complete. We're still kind of working with some of the GIS data to give us the best representation of how we can look at the current condition of the parks and what we have within those park systems. And then Confluence, along with BAR, one of our sub-consultants on this program, is looking at environmental analysis and assessment. And as part of that, we're looking at the natural resources, future park and facility modifications as related to stormwater, potential green infrastructure techniques, and how that affects the watershed and other regional governing bodies within the area. We're also looking at the park structures analysis and assessment with 292 Group, our architects. We've done a tour of the facilities, and we're doing a report summarization on that. And then also, one of the things that we're looking at, too, is with our subconsultant Dreambox, is the identity, image, and branding of Edina through your signage and wayfinding. And that's currently being undertaken as well right now. That's not listed on here, but that's something we're doing. So taking a look at all that stuff that was gathered with regards to our public workshop and our focus groups, we're beginning to formulate guiding principles that we'll use as a park board and as the city to move forward with identifying goals that are critical in the city, the strategic implementation of those goals as we move forward, and then how we test and gauge the results that have come from those strategic implementation goals. So meeting the other day with the committee, we've come up with the following guiding principles that are kind of the core values of what we see moving forward with the plan. And these are kind of just thrown out there on the wall, see if they stick. If they don't, we can revise them and talk about them. But they're just kind of give you an idea. And one of the things that came forward was to promote community health and wellness. That was very important. Provide innovation and service excellence. Promote social equity and engagement. strengthen the financial position of the Parks and Recreation Department, advance environmental stewardship and conservation, and then connect people to places. So those are the 6 main goals that we felt were really important now, are the 6 main guiding principles. Now, under those guiding principles, we'll have a series of goals that will begin to define everything from, financial budgeting, how we deal with a changing demographic society in the city of Edina, or a flexibility in our park system so that we can accommodate future recreational programs and opportunities that come forward. And then one of the big things that's part of this that really came forward was that whole idea of community health and wellness, and moving forward just as a city and as an organization, making that a forefront within this. And then something that came forward through some of our background analysis and the community survey was that connection of people to places, that whole trails and pathway system in the city of Edina being a top priority. So that's kind of a quick summary of where we're at. So I'll open it to, if you have any questions, I can go into a little bit more detail on some of these things.
I had a couple questions for you. So I was wondering if there's kind of a purpose statement or a vision statement that these principles fall under that the committee was working on, or if there's anything you can share on that.
Yeah, what we're going to do now is we'll take some of these guiding principles. We have the mission statement that is currently identified. We can rework that. We can modify that as we move forward once we find out what our key goals are here. And then what we're looking at is underneath each of these guiding principles is to give a definition as to what they describe and what they are. And those would become vision statements as part of the guiding principles. We also will kind of begin to categorize those under a different heading for each of those that kind of deals specifically with your facilities, your programs, your finances, your natural resources. So there'll be, more specific headings that deal with the specific goals that we'll put forward. So.
Okay, because generally I would think we would have sort of our purpose statement, and then the goals would help to, or your values would help to support whatever the goal is. So it sounds like it's a little bit backwards to me in the development of that, but that's just the process that you're going through.
Right. Yeah. We're just because a lot of the inventory and analysis and the benchmarking, that's going to begin to inform us as well as to where we're going. But we just kind of wanted to begin to identify some of the guiding principles that would be critical in us moving forward, so that we can begin to categorize some of those ideas.
Just to build on that, because I like it. I'm a little confused so I can understand what it's going to look like when it's done, and it's fluid. We can do things however we want, but we have a vision. Is there going to be a mission and purpose, and then these? Is that kind of the structure of the whole deal? And then from that, each of these guiding principles will have goals, and it rolls up.
Yeah,
we're just starting here to get a semblance of some order, and is that
exactly?
Is that right?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
I had a couple observations just as I read the principles. Would it be okay to share that?
Sure.
Okay. Because I haven't been part of the committee, so this was just my observation. For instance, I liked all of them. I mean, it seems like the group really was able to take all that feedback and hone it in on the key initiatives. It was just some of the words, so I just would share that. So, for instance, like promote community health and wellness. I think that's totally an objective, health and wellness, but it seems like the park system would be more on recreational focus to health and wellness, and I think that gets missed there, because this could be very broad and focus on, flu shots or, of medical kind of things. And I think we missed the park component of the recreational. So I was thinking it would be more promote recreational health and wellness, because that's what I think our focus would be. But that's my observation on that one. And then on a couple of other ones, like strengthen financial position, seemed very broad and not very specific enough for what the objective would be, because is that to be within budget, or is it to find new innovative ways to, create finances for the park system, or what does that mean? So I think that one was just too broad for me.
And yes and yes. I think we made it broad on purpose because the suggestions that you just made were certainly some of the things we talked about. We talked about having appropriate budgets, having appropriate capital funding, future funding sources, cost recovery, really anything that you can think of from a financial perspective. That's why we made it as broad as we did. Am I missing any categories? Some of the other things that we talked about, but that was the intention.
Yeah, and I think those are all good, but I think we have to have, somebody should be able to read this, I think, and understand what we're trying to do, because this is lower than the vision or the mission. This is, what do we, in the next 10, 15, 20 years, what are we focused on? And I think it's too broad.
Yeah. No, I understand that, and it's kind of why we wanted to give it to you now, before we did finalize it or get it too deep in. Because I think what we'll do is exactly that, is to define that and refine those a little bit more. We wanted to keep the guiding principles a simple statement so that people could kind of understand it without it being a long sentence or paragraph. We kind of went there as we were defining them the other day, and they just got too lengthy, and they seemed to be too descriptive, and we wanted to be a little bit more open so that we could fit a number of goals and objectives underneath them. We talked about sustainability. Sustainability could fall under financial. It could fall under the environmental stewardship. There's a lot of different components that it could fall under. So I think it's great, and this is all positive information for us to move forward with, definitely.
I had one other comment on the last bullet, which is connect people to places, which I think is great with the trail system, but feels like it would be more from the transportation group would have that as their goal, and ours would be more like connecting people to nature or connecting people to parks or something like that. So again, I just feel like these should be very specific to what we want to do with our park system, and not so broad that they're kind of a community-wide guidepost, which my first reading seemed like they were more focused on a community-wide than the park board would have something below it. So those are my observations.
Right. And I think from our discussion, we probably ventured more towards we want to do more with the parks and recreation component of the city than just provide sports venues and recreational programs. We want it to be something that can contribute to health and wellness to the community, connect people to places, and take the trail system. It's the Parks, Recreation, and Trails strategic plan, meaning that through recreation and activity, you can begin to connect people to not only the sports field or the playground, but also to the hospital or the shopping mall. And via that, they are, recreating and being active and having more of an active lifestyle, whether that's by biking, walking, and that's kind of the direction that we were headed with that. I can understand the specificity of it, but we're kind of looking to be a little more broad in that sense. It could also be kayaking. It doesn't have to necessarily be a trail. It could be somebody just having the ability to get a kayak in a body of water through a public access and have that opportunity as well. So we did leave a little vague, but like I said, it's all open to interpretation right now. That's why we're working on it.
And I understand that. I just want to make sure that because these are the guideposts, I think people need to leave, like if we gave these 6 guideposts to someone that didn't know anything about the park system, they would understand what our objectives were. And I just feel they're too broad. People don't know the basis of where we're coming from a finance perspective to know what we're driving. I think what you said with the kayak, that's still nature. It gets you someplace, but I just think we should make sure that they're park board related goals. Okay. And one other thing, I was just wondering how the maintenance fits in, because a lot of the things that I've heard is we have maintenance concerns and things that don't necessarily get budgeted for the maintenance, and somehow maybe it's the sustainability that you said, but we need to make sure that part is factored into the goals.
The service excellence component would kind of cover that through how we look after things, how we maintain things, how we upgrade and make sure that we're cutting edge.
How involved will the park board be in each step of the process as we get more and more detailed? Because what Brenda is saying is right. You know, how do we make sure that the strategic plan does cover all the different areas that the members kind of feel that are important?
Yeah, well, I think through our committee meetings, but I think coming forward through these meetings as well, and I think providing the information that we'll gather to give to you for review and comment and redline. Ann's staff did a great job of beginning to identify what they see as critical things they want to get done through goals and objectives. A lot of our analysis will push forward where you're lacking within the park system and where you're excelling within the park system. So that'll begin to help us identify a lot of those goals and strategies and objectives. So we'll take that, we'll put it together in a document, and then we want to put it through you, through the whole process. So we will bring it forward, have it reviewed by the park board and the committee and the city staff, and then refine it as needed until it becomes the final document for approval. So continually throughout the next few months until there is a final document, we'll be bouncing ideas back and forward with the committee, the city, and the park board. So.
And Terry and Louise, I would make another suggestion as well. As we continue to meet as staff with Terry and Pros Consulting, and as we continue to meet as a committee, staff would be more than happy to put together emails to the entire park board to update everyone as to the progress that we're making and the meetings that we're having, so that between park board meetings and maybe even between committee meetings, we can keep everyone up to speed. As Terry said, really for the first few months, we've been in data gathering mode, and now we're really starting to get to the point where we're formulating our principles and really what we want to do with the information. So now is the critical time that we receive more input from the board.
Yeah, I think we don't want to burden the process, but on the other hand, we don't want to find ourselves towards the end of the process with a draft of the strategic plan, and then each of the members here saying, well, gee, what about this and what about that? And the what-abouts are big topics that we should have thought about.
I completely agree with you. I want as much input as I possibly can get from the entire board. I want to thank the committee members that have given so much of their time and really fantastic feedback and expertise. We've had some really, really good meetings, and I definitely want to pull and draw more from the entire board. So I'd be more than happy to do that if you think it would be helpful.
Just as a follow-up, for example, there's a list of draft goals here, and it would be very useful, I think, that if everyone on the board would review this and add their own goal. I mean, now would be, I think, the appropriate time for the consultants to hear which of these, I don't know, what are we missing with the staff goals? What would we like to see on there, and or maybe prioritization?
Yeah, it's going to be very critical as we do identify all these goals that you help us to establish what the priorities are. Some of the priorities will be dictated by just your need. The fact that something's in really horrible condition or you just don't have that offered within the recreational program currently or within as a facility. But it's definitely critical that you guys are part of that prioritization as we move forward, because that'll help us in setting the whole document together with regards to funding sources and timelines and everything for implementation. You talked 5 to 10 to 20. Reality is a 5-year plan is a great time to check back and see what you've done great and what you haven't done, do a summary of that, and then move forward, modifying where we think we need to go. So I think it'll be very critical to identify those key priorities to show that we've actually made steps within the program.
This just came to my mind because of Brenda's comment on connecting people to places, and that made me think about jurisdiction. But we had talked about like a park overlay as part of comprehensive plan. And, getting more park and recreation inclusion into our plans. So while I certainly understand either planning commission or transportation or whoever would have to heavily be involved, maybe this is the start of getting something going so that we are included comprehensively within city plans.
Couldn't agree with you more, Kia. I think that's a great comment, and we do need to have the conversations about how we're going to incorporate the findings from this study into the comprehensive plan. Terry and Susan and I had a really great meeting with Mark Nolan from our engineering department talking about how we could do a trail system that goes around the entire city of Edina and connects the majority of our parks. And it was a fantastic conversation because of the wide variety of opportunities that we have to tie into engineering projects, the 9 Mile Creek Trail project. So that's another really great potential as part of the comprehensive plan.
Seems like we're not being discouraged not to do it, and someone needs to take it up and start discussing it. So
agreed.
Yeah, I agree. I think, that's a good idea. I just want to make sure ours is focused on what we are responsible for. Otherwise, we're going to, have this broad goals that we're not really going to be able to do anything against because it's just too big. But if there's a component of it and it's about partnering with these other commissions or boards and promoting this type of thing, I think that would be key to making this successful because we wouldn't even be able to do it by ourselves. So.
Yeah, there's a fine line. 'Cause I like that, but there's only so far you can go. But it's our time to have a vision and to exert some influence with what we see, and we'd like to see down the road. So, but it has to stay within a certain playground. Yeah.
I mean, just to add it on the record, when we go ahead to define this connecting people to places, maybe saying elevating the inclusion of parks and recreation within the comprehensive plan or something like that, so that we understand that it requires involvement from our other boards and commissions.
Yeah, I think that's a great opportunity. Just in the discussion we had with Mark, he seemed very excited to include both the Parks and Rec Department and what he was doing because he felt it gave more validity to a lot of the initiatives that he's putting forward with regards to the circulation system.
All right, are there any more questions or comments? We're being asked to provide approval to a draft of the guiding principles. Brenda, I'm not sure, you made a lot of comments. Do you have any particular verbiage you'd like to make a motion to add, and we can...
Do you think we really need to approve these right now, or can they be just a working document as you go forward? Because I think you've got a long way to go here. I really do think we have to make sure that before we approve a guiding principle, we really know what our purpose and vision is, and that statement can have a lot of the things we talked about today. It can have the connectivity with other boards and commissions in that statement, and then things can fall off of that. Just to me, I just feel like we're not quite ready to say these are exactly what we want the principles to be. But maybe
no, and I don't think so. In fact, I agree completely. It's not, but we could go as far as to say it's a draft, and that they're on the right, the steps. There's more to it, but so far so good, and we'll continue, to have some input on it.
Yeah, I think if we're approving, like, here's a draft that's going to be revised as we go forward, and the progress that's been made, I think that's fine. I just want to make sure I'm not approving that this is exactly what it's going to say, because I just think they're, like I said,
no, this is just a summary of where we're at in the process.
Yeah. So unless there's very large disagreement with where we're at, I think we should be comfortable going forward, knowing we have plenty of room for more input. But, all right, everyone comfortable with that? All right, if someone wants to make a motion towards that end, then please.
I'll make a motion approving the draft guiding principles and draft goals to provide feedback on guiding principles as presented.
All right.
Second.
All right, there's a second. So all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And those opposed? All right, there you have it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next up, we have the redevelopment planning update for Grandview, the former Public Works site, with Bill Neuendorf. Good evening.
Great, thank you. Good evening. Let's see, let me get a presentation up here. All right. Great. Good evening. My name is Bill Neuendorf. I'm the city's economic development manager, and I'm joined here this evening with Dave Anderson, who's with Fraun Shoe Companies. We're here tonight to give you an update on our exploration on our planning process for the vacant site where the Public Works building had been in the Grandview district. This is a presentation that we gave to our city council last week, but we really wanted to get in front of the Park and Rec board as well. This is the site. It's right behind Jerry's, just north of OLG. It's about 3.5 acres. And we're currently studying possible reuse scenarios that would include a private component and a public component, so to have a mixed-use building. Any public use or civic use would most likely fall under the Park and Rec umbrella. So before we get too far in our planning process, we wanted to make sure that we come here and let you know where we are so far, and also hear any of your concerns and comments. This is a timeline of the planning process.
Excuse me, can I just interrupt just for a second? I was thinking about that statement that you just made about the fact that it would be part of the Park and Rec board. And in fact, this is under discussion. I just wanted to clarify something. Has the city council recommended that the park board be involved in this? I know we asked to have this be a part of our work plan. And we were told by the city council that it would not be a part of our work plan, but it would be a part of the Arts and Culture Advisory Board work plan. So I'm just wanting to clarify, has there been a change?
That's a great question, and I don't know if I have the full answer. Maybe Ann can help me with that. At this point, the project is under my management through the administrative department. Certainly, we're reaching out to our Planning Commission, our Park Board, our Arts and Culture Working Group, our Public Arts Working Group, our Energy and Environment Commission, our Housing Commission. So we're making the rounds of all the commissions. But as far as where it lies in your work plan, that I'm not familiar with. I don't know if Ann would have a better clarification on that.
It is not falling specifically on the work plan of the Park Board, but I would second what Bill is saying. I think that the goal is to try to solicit input from all of the different boards and commissions at this point. And as public space continues to become more refined for the space, as Bill mentioned, it's going to fall under our umbrella, so there will be more involvement by the Park Board, if that helps.
I don't what do you mean it's going to fall under our umbrella?
It's going to fall. It's very likely that a public space at Grandview would fall under the Parks and Recreation Department umbrella, whether it's a recreation facility or an arts facility, or an indoor or an outdoor park, fitness center, that would fall underneath the Parks and Recreation Department.
Right, and in general, whenever something like this is in planning, I just want to clarify this because people are watching on television and are thinking, well, the Park Board is involved in this process. In fact, normally it would be part of our work plan, and we would be creating a work group or a committee or something, and we would be discussing it and involved in the stages of planning and discussion on it, and it's not. So we are only hearing, as you're saying, we're only hearing what all the other boards are hearing, and we are not involved in any way in this process.
So, Anne, what you mean to say is that whatever is eventually built, we will manage and oversee. We won't be involved in deciding what is built or how that will be done.
No, I think there will be much more conversation about what goes in the public space. The conversation just has not gotten to that level yet.
But we're at the stage right now where all the public meetings have been done, and the scenarios are going to come back in a month. So we're going to be responding to the scenarios. We have not been a part of developing those scenarios. I'm just clarifying. I mean, I'm just stating the fact that we haven't been, and nor are we being asked to. And so I'm just saying that's the fact.
We haven't been, but it seems like there is an opportunity now that the public input has been gathered, and I don't know if it would have made sense if the park board had directed the public process before. You kind of want the public to lead the process. So I think there's opportunity to have input, but yes, we have not had much input since today.
If I could continue. So this evening might be a good time for input. If I could, I'd like to run through the process and where we are in the process to date. I'm going to run quickly through the historical process, but this site has been discussed since about 2008, when the city made the decision to relocate the Public Works facility to a new site that better fit the city's needs. At that point, there was an effort and a project to sell the property to private ownership to help pay for the new Public Works facility. It was decided 2008 or 2009, somewhere in that time frame, to not do that, to instead look at the broader Grandview area to see how this site could be leveraged to yield additional benefit, additional redevelopment energy throughout the district. So that's the path that we're working on. In past years, we've convened 3 different advisory teams. Different commission members were involved on some or probably all of those teams. 2 of those were convened before I was hired by the city, so I don't have all the detail on the 2011 and 2012 efforts. But the direction that the City Council gave us last year was to move forward using the development framework vision that was crafted by the 2012 advisory team that had some long-term visions for the district. In a way, those were kind of dreams. While we used architects and planners and we had a developers forum to put some real-world numbers to the projects, it was that guide plan was a direction to go to. So at this point, we are working on implementing the first phase, the first step in that vision. We felt the first step, the easiest step would be to redevelop the site that the city currently owns and controls. So that's what we're working on now. In summer of 2014, we went out to bid to find a development partner to help us bring reality to our dreams and visions for the site. And after a competitive process, the City Council selected to work with Franschu and their team of consultants and experts in the field. So since November, we've been working on that effort. In November and December, we refreshed our old surveys and studies that we had performed. We started reaching out and had a large group meeting on December 4th where we had really good attendance. We had over 100 people. And in fact, it was almost standing room only, had a lot of interest in that meeting, and wish we had picked a bigger room to hold it in. But we did get a lot of good information from that session. And after that, we've also been going to commissions, to boards. We've been reaching out to neighborhood groups, youth groups, sports groups, to try to get additional ideas. At this point, we're still really in that exploration phase, or that idea gathering phase. In addition to our boards and commissions, we've also had several pretty vigorous online discussions using the Speak Up Edina format, also some Facebook ads where there's been a lot of comments and suggestions, and then also a roving suggestion box that we've transported to several different sites in the community to try to get additional input, additional ideas of what is the best way to redevelop and reuse that property. So soon we're going to be transitioning from the exploration phase to really putting those pieces together. At some point we've got to stop getting new ideas and start putting the ideas that we have together, and that's one of the next phases that's in front of us. And as we begin to do that, we wanted to summarize some of the comments that we've heard so far. In fact, not some, but we want to summarize everything that we've heard so far over the last several years, but more specifically over the last several months. So we had mentioned this December 4th exploration session. In that meeting, I mentioned we had over about 130 people in attendance, and we had a lot of good comments that came from that. There were a number of small group sessions that followed that up, because with a large group it was very difficult to have an intimate conversation with 130 of your closest neighbors. So we followed that up with a number of small group sessions. We reached out to over 120 different community groups, and we've scheduled 10 to 15 different meetings so far, a few more coming up in the next couple weeks. In January, we set 4 sessions with the Edina High School students. And it was really interesting. We ran through the same presentation that we did with the general public in December, but with the high school students that have an interest in engineering and architecture. So it was relevant to the curricula, but it was specific for this site. And it was really interesting to compare what the younger generation had for their ideas as compared to what the other generations had that we heard from. So in summary, and I've got like 4 slides of summary, but we've gathered so many comments, hundreds and hundreds of comments. I've read so many comments, my eyes spin every time I open more of them up. But to summarize what we've heard so far, number one, there's strong and diverse opinions about this site. There's great passion. There's people that feel passionately one way or the other, or anywhere in between. We've heard that there's widespread recognition that some of the facilities that are owned by the city and the school district are outdated. We've heard general dissatisfaction with the existing Edina Community Center, that it might not meet the needs or might not be as up to date as some people would like. And that was interesting because we didn't ask that question, but in fact, a lot of these, we never asked specific questions, but these are the themes that we're hearing when we ask the general questions. We also heard a recognition that the Grandview District functions as a neighborhood center, but that has attractions to the community. So it's different than a small neighborhood retail strip center, but it's also different than Southdale. It's intended to be a place that people go to, but not that everyone goes to. So there's kind of that balance, but we've heard that from a lot of folks. We've heard widespread concerns about the cost of any new public facility, and I would say that's one thing that surprised me, to be quite honest. The more folks I speak with, the greater concern I hear about making more investments. There's some concern with the referendum that's coming up, with some of the new sports facilities that have been completed. There's concern of, can we afford all this right now? There's definitely a preference to coordinate improvements with the city property, the public works property, and adjacent properties, in particular the school bus garage. Ideally, those would work together and be complementary. One of the biggest themes is, and we've heard this honestly from, it doesn't matter the age group, doesn't matter men, women, whether they've been in the city for 5 years or 45 years, but there's a recognition and the desire to have a community gathering space that's welcoming to all ages. And it's difficult to refine what that looks like. Different people have different images of what that looks like, but that's been a comment we've heard throughout every group that we've chatted with. And then also related to the new improvement, to any new construction, the comment about transportation always comes up, and the recognition that Sometimes there's traffic jams by OLG. Some of the intersections don't work as well as they could. Sometimes there's delays during the rush hour. If you try to bicycle or walk through the area, that can be challenging. So there's definitely the recognition that with any new project, any new construction, we also have to look at that transportation component. To summarize what we've heard regarding how the site could be used, there's been 4 main themes that have evolved regarding the public portion of the property. And again, there are strong and passionate feelings for each of these. Right now, I couldn't say that there's greater support for one or the other, but again, these are kind of the themes that we're hearing.
Bill, do you mind if I interrupt every once in a while I have a question on a definition
It's up to the chair.
Of public uses. I've been at many of these meetings and I'm really unclear. Could you define public and private? Sure.
So to define public and private, it can be a fairly black or white type of thing. I think a real good example is actually Centennial Lakes. So at the Centennial Lakes development, it's about 100+ acres. There's a lot of properties there that are public. Or I'm sorry, a lot of properties that are private. You've got retail, you've got office, medical office, condo, apartment, all distinct uses, and they're privately owned and operated. And then you have the public piece, that's the park and the lakes and the bocce area, the lawn bowling area, the sculpture, the labyrinth, that are public, but yet they're right next to each other. So one's public, one's private, but they have a relationship.
So what I'm hearing is that public would be owned and operated by the city.
Most likely. Yeah, that's really regarding ownership and operation. We haven't even come to that point, to be quite honest. But that's traditionally how it could most simply work.
Okay.
So regarding the themes that we've heard for the land use, the word significant has been used a lot in many conversations, but there's a recognition, and I would say a general acceptance of this idea of doing a mixed use with public and private pieces working together. The caveat to that is the pieces need to be significant. So, for example, if there's a 10,000 square foot building with a 10 by 10 kiosk that says public welcoming center, that's not significant. But if there's a significant public piece and a significant private piece, that seems to be generally accepted. Regarding what those uses would be, particularly for the public piece, there's definitely support for a community recreation center. I've heard analogies to the Wilston Center in Minnetonka, to Lifetime Fitness, to LA Fitness, to other larger community centers, think Shoreview, Chaska, those types, but with a recreational focus. There's definitely support for a community arts and cultural center. There's been recognition that our existing arts center could be better, and perhaps is under-promoted. Along with the arts and culture is a recognition of just general Edina history. Arts can take many shapes, both in galleries, producing art, teaching art, doing lecture, poetry readings, recitals, any number of activities related to the arts seems to have support. Related to that, but a little bit different, there's also support for a performing arts center. There's recognition that the city has a couple great facilities that are owned by the school district, but that they're oftentimes difficult to book new events in there because the space and the timing just isn't available. So we've heard from a lot of folks that Edina could perhaps use a performing arts center, and think perhaps something similar to the Hopkins Art Center. Bloomington has a newer art center. Burnsville has a pretty large performing arts center. And then the fourth theme that we're hearing is this community gathering space that's welcoming to all ages and is used for something that people like. So that's kind of the fallback position that seems to be the recurring theme. Something like this also bubbled up back in 2012 when the development framework was adopted. Having a place that's welcoming, that has indoor space and outdoor space. In fact, the request for outdoor space was also strongly received regardless of age group, regardless of gender. High school kids, grandmas and grandpas, moms and dads, everybody on the spectrum, there was definitely recognition that there needs to be active outdoor space and active indoor space. So those are the 4 themes that we've heard so far. We're still refining, we're still taking comments, but as this comes to you, I and the rest of our team would love to hear your impressions about those uses. I've got 3 other comments to share. As we've asked folks, there's also been a recurring theme or desire for improvements to our parks and also for improvements to open space. It was interesting with the high school students in particular, we started to have a conversation about parks, and parks are always nice and they like parks, they can do different things there. But then somebody mentioned, well, do we really want a park right next to the railroad tracks and right next to the highway? Is that the best place to have a park to do these things that we want to do? And that kind of changed the conversation with that group. But we've heard the desire to have improvements to our parks from most groups. And then on the private side, it's been kind of interesting. Restaurants have been, they come up in virtually every conversation. Depending on the group, the type of restaurant can change. To the high school students, we hear Chipotle and those types of quick casual things. To busy moms and dads that are dropping their kids off and running them to practice, we've heard, sure would be nice to have something with a drive-through that we can stop at quickly as we're on our way to this practice or that practice. And then from others, and I'd say perhaps the most popular request is a sit-down restaurant for family, a nicer restaurant in the area. That's, again, been mentioned quite a bit. And then also housing. The need for housing in the area has been a persistent request. And that's been interesting. There's been, I would say that at this point, there's greater support for housing than there is opposition. But we've had many comments of what a great place for housing. We're moving out of our home. We've lived here forever, but our kids are gone now. We really want some more options to downsize. This would be a great place for us. In the same group, I could hear from the people sitting next to them saying, we don't need more housing. I'm in my house. Why do I need more housing? So there's definitely a split voice on that, but the housing has been a recurring conversation.
So I'm a very data-driven person, and I love numbers. Do you have numbers on any of these items? So we can see like a breakdown of what people, favored or ranked or...
At this point, we don't. Not for this new data. We're still collecting it, so we have not crunched any numbers, and frankly, I don't know if we'll be able to. As we've gone and particularly done these small sessions, I'm not tabulating votes. I'm just writing down themes of the conversation. We did do a survey, a phone survey, about a year ago, and regarding this particular site, and that was interesting. There was a question about housing, and it was, I forgot the exact percentage, but it was over 50% of the people said we don't need housing. And that really surprised me, quite frankly. I think it also surprised our researcher who had explained that by saying that when they polled folks, they polled existing residents that are in their homes today. And he said, so you might think that it would be naturally occurring that they already have a place to live, why would they need a new place to live? So that's how he kind of explained that poll result. But it's been interesting, as I go out to the groups the last couple months, it's strong opinions. I need a new place to live, and then literally the person at the next table, why would anybody need a new place to live?
Right.
So again, there's no consensus on this.
But when it comes to that particular data, I mean, those are our taxpayers, so we do need a comprehensive look at what our city can support or wants to support. I really appreciated the Vision Edina presentation, the first presentations with the city where they broke down our survey results and said, they had the 4 quadrants and the number of people. It just really helped to convince me and feel confident in my decision. And so going forward, any numbers and not just numbers, but looking at the demographics of the people that are involved. I know we've done great survey information because they were very well done surveys that were statistically accurate. And if I'm seeing things that don't agree with those surveys, then I don't know how to really go along with it because, quite frankly, these meetings are drawing the loudest and most active participants. And I am interested in the city as a whole, especially since this is a financially heavy endeavor. So.
That's a real good point. And to address that concern, because it's a very legitimate question and concern, that's one of the reasons that we wanted to partner with a development expert. So before we do any, before we get to the real proposal phase, we'll want to do a market study and have an idea of what the real market demand is out there. It's interesting and I would argue helpful to go to the different groups and hear the perspectives. But when it comes to actually pulling the trigger and making a multi-million-dollar investment, that's where we need that expertise from the private sector to determine, is there real demand to make it successful? The thing that we definitely don't want is any project, the private portion or the public portion, to be built and not be successful. So that's a very legitimate question.
It seems like we're going to solidify the private part of it, but I'm not seeing from this timeline, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we're going to solidify the public component so that we're going to go back and ensure statistically that this is a viable thing that the that residents support and are behind. I just feel, we make sure we're going to get the dollar, but we don't, make sure we have full confidence that we're serving all of our residents the best that we can.
So that there's definitely a number of next steps to consider here, and maybe I'll just jump to those quickly, if I can figure out which way to do this. So the next steps in the process are to start to, first to continue to collect data. For about the next month or so, we're still heavily in data collection mode. On March 11th, we've scheduled another large group public session to start to take some of these pieces, some of these ideas that we've heard, and start putting them together to see how they fit on the site, to see what works together, what works well together, and what doesn't work well together. We've got to figure that out. So we haven't done that yet. But on March 11th, we're going to continue in that effort. In April is when it starts to get real. In April, we'll present at least 3 different concept plans that work, that fit on the site, that park on the site, that have general community support for the uses, and have dollar and cents numbers associated with them. That'll go to our city council in April. We'll also hold an open house on April 22nd to explain those concepts further and get additional input. In May, we'll continue taking public input on those options, sit down with the city council. I'm happy to come back to the Park and Rec Board as well and get additional input. But if there's one of these scenarios that the city council is pleased with that does meet the general needs of the city, I'm optimistic that we'll be in a position where they can say yes to something. It's always a possibility that maybe there isn't something that fits and works best for the community. Then we could take a pass, time spent on the effort, but we won't build anything. That's always an option. But at this point in the project, and in fact, since November 4th, when the council signed this agreement to move forward on this project, we're trying to find a set of uses and a set of functions that can work well together, that can create a place that the city is proud of, that's supported by our residents, that's financially stable and supported and successful. So those are some of our next steps. There's a lot of other information, but I feel like I've been getting into the weeds, which I don't fully intend to do. If there's other questions, I'm happy to entertain them, or other comments as well. If there's some of these uses that you feel are far superior, or if there's some of these uses that just don't make sense, or maybe there's things that you've heard that we've not heard, please share. That's one of the reasons that we're here tonight.
I don't think any of us are surprised to see the 4 public uses that are listed here. And, I look at other communities nearby and I look at their arts and culture centers, and I am sensitive about our lack of one. But that being said, it seems like all around us there are so many arts and culture centers that have performance space. Are we overbuilt in that regard? I wonder. I mean, if that's one of the uses that is high on the priority list, I think we need to make sure whether or not these other venues are being used, or whether we're going to be scrambling to find performances to take place in this new culture center. But, I think that in order for the whole project to be successful, private and public, what we do on the public side has to complement what the market can support on the private side. And I think we have to be quite cognizant that we need to rely on our private partner to tell us what the market can support. Now, I know we want public input, but the bottom line, the project has to be financed, and the developer has to put together a project timely in a market that can support it.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have you were asking what I thought, what we thought about the proposed facilities here, which stand out. And I would suggest, I'm with Louise, and I am also with Kia on both of their comments earlier. I agree with Kia. You're not instilling confidence in us by showing us that there is a high desire for apartments when the Morris Leatherman survey clearly stated that would I think we have it on tape. It would be a deal breaker if there were apartments proposed on that. The residents would not favor that. There was that much negative toward that. The other thing that's not coming out is the fact that a great number of residents want to keep that land public. They do not feel that a significant private presence is something that they want on that public land. I've talked to people, they consider it kind of like they see their family growing, and you're going to then sell or lease your driveway and a part of your living room. It doesn't make sense to them that the city, on this last centrally located piece of property on transit, which is what we have talked about with our strategic plan. It's on transit. It is 3.5 acres, big enough to support one of the last big enough pieces that could be big enough for a community center, that we would consider taking off bits of it for apartment buildings that could be built elsewhere. In other words, this would be the cheapest way to put in a community center in Edina because we already have the land. There are residents who've talked to me and said, why do we always invest in facilities south of 62? There are no major facilities north of 62. So if you look at our capital improvement plan, what is the percentage of money going to the south part of the city versus the north part of the city? I would think that the people that are living particularly in the northwest would say, what facilities have this, what's in it for me lately? This is centrally located. People have talked to me saying we are getting so far behind because of look at what St. Louis Park is doing. They've just spent $400,000 on an architect for a proposed $50 million community center. Eden Prairie is increasing their aquatic center with fitness. Chaska, Chanhassen, Richfield is looking for new land for a community center. We are so far behind. If you look at any of these, our community center is not functioning like a community center. It has 11 community ed rooms. There's instability and uncertainty, on whether or not there will even be that in the future. I do not understand this lack of understanding that the city is not going to invest in health and wellness when that is part of our strategic plan. And there are studies that state if you are building facilities for health and wellness, you should be building them in locations because the further, 1 mile out matters when it comes to people actually using facilities. I'm very confused as to how we're going to look at our discussions of the senior center, where we, as a group, have said we wanted to consolidate that into a community building that is not labeled senior, but would be multi-generational and yet not build a building big enough for activities for all generations. The fact that we're looking at a performance space next to a rail line, if you've ever heard the railroad train whistle, and the fact that that would be probably the most expensive place because of sound remediation to build a performance space has not been discussed very openly. Or, why would the city plan a performance space between a highway and a loud train? I don't understand. The fact that they're thinking about putting apartments in when cities like Egan are canceling their resident, it was St. Mary's came up, that they wouldn't put development in because of air noise, because they felt that it was not important. It was, why would you build in conflict? I still am, to this day, am really frustrated that the city council is not asking the park board to be involved in planning this. And we have all of 10 minutes in this meeting to state that this seems like a big missed opportunity. If the scenarios come back and there won't be one that doesn't say the whole public property should be a community center, multi-generational, on transportation. It would be, perhaps it would have some arts component. But to say that we're going to continue to ignore the needs for a community center seems to be a wasted opportunity.
Can I entertain you with an idea from a park board member?
Please.
And I understand that we're a very big vision right now, and some of the park board members have heard my idea, so I'm sorry. But I was thinking of having like a collaborative workspace with a health and wellness theme to it, where there would be walking treadmill desks, bike desk, standing desks, so that really it could serve the teenage population. So it would be a safe gathering place after school where students can come and do their work. I own a walking treadmill desk. They can do their work. I know in the Starbucks area, lots of tutors go there to help students, so it would be a good place for tutors to come. But there are a lot of health and wellness opportunities. You could do classes about ergonomics, and talking about health in the workplace. And I think there's a lot of things that haven't been done, a lot of innovative ideas, but also room for partnership, whether it's with Fairview on those classes or with the actual equipment, which I don't think we would see as much with traditional, recreational, whether it's treadmill or weightlifting or whatever. Maybe there's a possibility to have a partnership with that kind of company. So I just wanted to throw it out there. I think there's a lot of innovative opportunities from the park and recreation standpoint, and I wish we had more of a chance to kind of flush those out. But if people are willing to listen, I think we can give them our ideas. So
I tend to agree with Ellen that we have a lot of public needs. That we could utilize the whole site ourselves. But I think the reality of the situation is that we as a public municipality will not get the project done as quickly as a project can be done if we pair with a private developer. So to get a project done, we're going to compromise the loss of some public space. And I think when I look at these uses, actually the idea of the train interrupting the performances, I hadn't even thought about that, but I think you're right. Even if it boils down to 3 of these uses that have been identified, these are like big box users. I mean, they're big square footage uses, and let's not kid ourselves. I mean, between the private guys trying to get their project done, we're gonna squeeze in a public use, I think, and it's going to be one of these maybe. So there'll be different scenarios, as you said, but we're not going to have a project unless we pair with a private developer in the near term. In the near term,
and I am at this point, I am not sure why we are rushing to say we need to build on that, because quite frankly, we don't know what is going to happen with the school referendum.
Yeah, that's true. But how long have we been talking about this Grandview site? How many years?
I am not sure why it has never been discussed openly, to my knowledge, in any meeting. The city has never asked, do we want to keep this 100% public and have a discussion of that? I've never heard of that. And so that would have been the starting point. Several committees, all of the advisory committees, the committee that Susan was on, the steering committee that I was on, all recommended that the city pursue what the public use would be first. For whatever reason, ignoring citizen requests, the city council has decided to go down this other route, which would then mean there would be private use on that public property. So I don't understand that, Louise.
But how long have we been talking about this? When you and I first joined the park board, you took this on, didn't you?
I did.
I've
been at all of those meetings, so I do know it.
I'm bad with time. 5 years ago, we have been talking about this for 5 years.
Mm-hmm. And we still need a community center in Edina. So that need won't go away, and what we will be doing is building on probably the best location for it. You guys think of where else it could be. We had a hard time finding where the dome could be. There just aren't that many sites for it. Pick out where we would find transportation centrally located, big enough for all generations to have activities to do. This is the problem, one of the problems with our current senior center. It's got a lot of square footage. How much square footage do we have there? the top of my head, I can't remember, but it's not enough for this, what we're looking for, which is synergies between the this is what our city is asking for. And why would we say, oh, well, we can't dream like other cities and have a community center? Why would we say that?
But I think the problem with the there's support for the idea of a public space or a community center, but there is an agreement of what that looks like. And until there's agreement of what that looks like, there's not going to be enough support or force behind it to make it happen. And so how do we establish consensus, I think?
Okay, well, the way to establish consensus, and I agree, there hasn't been, because at the meeting where over 100 people were, where there would have been an opportunity to ask people, well, what would you like to see at a community center? That question was not asked. So until the leadership is willing to say, residents, what do you want to see in a community center? Until that question's asked, there will never be consensus.
Well, I would disagree in that. I mean, there are different types of, these 4 different types of public programming, and there isn't consensus there. So until we start looking at numbers or something else about what the breakdown of these 4 ideas are, then, we can't really weigh what the support behind one of these items versus a private enterprise would be.
Well, and why would we have to pick and choose? It's possible there is room for all of those.
Can I just mention that your discussion is very helpful? It's also reflective of most discussions that I've been in attendance with. There's no easy answer. If it were easy, we would have been finished 4.5 years ago. There's some tough decisions that have to be made regarding use, programming, financing, the desire to get something done versus the desire to wait if it's not the right time. There's lots of big decisions that have to be made, and we hope to be in a position with this input and others in the next couple months. If there's other questions, I'm happy to entertain them. I also have, I mentioned Dave Anderson from Franchu here. Terry Minerick, who is working on the Park Master Plan, is also working on this project, so he's kind of leveraging what he's learning from that process into this site as well. And I was going to mention one other thing. I guess an invitation. So if this is not the best forum for this group to sit down and discuss this site, we've made the offer before. We're happy to extend it again. If you want to sit down in a special work session, sit down at the table, roll up our sleeves, and talk about what could be on the site, we're happy to do it. I mentioned I've scheduled at least 12 to 15 meetings just like that with other boards, community groups, sports groups, arts groups. Happy to have that conversation. But at this point, the project task that I've been assigned by my city council, by our city council, is to look at a mixed use, public and private, and so that's what we're doing. Early on, in fact, in the same survey where we had that housing question, we asked about a community center. We asked many different ways about a community center. There was definitely support for a community center. There was little agreement on what people mean when they say community center. And while there was support for it, disappointingly, there was not support to pay for it. That's what we found in that survey. And that's part of what led to this hybrid model, where if we can have a site that's part public, part private, the private thing helps pay for our public thing. So our hope is, one of my hopes is that we can deliver a project that gives the taxpayer something that they're pleased, something that they need, something that they're happy with, but at a price point where they don't have to bear the full burden of the cost. So that's where we're trying to end up.
Okay, and Bill, I have a comment about that because I chaired the Hornet's Nest, and in that committee, we came to a public-private way of funding a public amenity. and that was by leasing space to a retail and leasing space to a service, Velocity, which worked with the city, works really well with the arena, because by bringing those two private companies in, their lease ends up paying for part of the building costs, both capital costs and operational costs now. So I would really like to sit down and talk with you as a group to make sure that we're talking about those types of public-private collaboration. We're doing it. Tin Fish is coming in. We just saw the plans for that. It is a wonderful partnership that we're doing in order to bring restaurants into our parks. And I think that type of way of looking at how we can do that so that we could make a community center affordable is the way that would give the city the most flexibility in the future as we look at what might change. Who knows what's going to happen with the transportation, with the trains, with whatever. That type of making sure that we can have 5-year leases, which was what we just found out about from Tin Fish. So we have a 5-year lease on a restaurant. If as it is happening in all cities, when there is fitness and or health and wellness that comes to an area, that usually needs to expand.
The kind of public-private partnership where we own the whole project and lease increases the risk of the city, and it also requires that we get all the financing. And so it's kind of apples to oranges, that kind of partnership compared to this kind of partnership. And I think, and I'm known to be the less process-oriented of the whole group, I think you have our comments. And I don't know that our position in this situation room lends itself to another meeting. I mean, another meeting? I would take the opposite inclination and not have another meeting about this.
Yeah, I would just reiterate my comments about data and numbers, because we can't argue with that. So I understand it's a very complex decisions to make, but if we have concrete numbers to look at, I think we're going to have a better understanding, and that will make us all more confident. And
I guess
you mean the city more confident, the city council more confident.
Any decision maker, I think. Member Jacobson,
well,
go ahead.
But we're not the decision maker.
I guess just the one thing that I find most frustrating is that the Morris Leatherman survey did say that the neighborhoods did not want increased either apartments or condos, and that my gut is telling me that the public or the private financing, in order to balance the community public effort, is going to have to be housing. How could anything else support public? So that's what doesn't fit with me.
All right. As we can tell, there's a lot of emotional investment here with some different folks, and that's great because a lot of us have been involved with the Grandview project from beginning to end and know that's very difficult. But we appreciate all of your information, and thanks for your efforts thus far.
Thanks, and we'll also be in touch with the upcoming dates again. And we're happy to make another visit here to update. Once we do have real scenarios with real costs to them, that'll be in April. We're happy to come back, or you're welcome to attend the open house as well. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Moving along. Looks like this meeting is going to be considerably shorter than last time. So anything to add from anyone, Ann, and on down the line on council updates and or the Veterans Memorial Committee minutes? All right. And then we have chair and board member comments. My I do not have any. Anyone else have any particular comments they want to voice at this point? No? All right. Then we're down to staff comments.
I
Ann?
have a comment.
Thank you, Dan. I have a couple of updates for you. First, on Weber Woods, the city of Edina and St. Louis Park received a counteroffer from the city of Minneapolis on the property. Our two cities had offered the city of Minneapolis approximately $1 million for the property, and we received a counteroffer from the city of Minneapolis for $1.6 to $1.7 million. And we have discussions ongoing with the city of St. Louis Park, and I'll keep you updated as to that process. Wanted to give you an update on park dedication fees. We have a couple of projects going on that I thought that you might be interested in. Regarding the Byerly's project, we will be receiving $1,027,000 from the Byerly's development in park dedication fees. Of that, just over $1 million, $665,000 is proposed to be invested in the Promenade Phase 4 project, and that will leave $362,000 in park dedication fees. And we also will be receiving approximately $500,000 from the Yorktown Continental development, which is on York Avenue. So some really significant park dedication fees that we can consider as we're working on the strategic plan of the park system. Wanted to let you know that warming houses and skating rinks are still open. If you recall, we used to close our skating rinks on President's Day every year, and a couple of years ago we decided to try to keep the rinks open as long as possible, so we're still going strong. And so there's no end in sight at this point. We have our staff scheduled until early March, so we'll see how the weather holds for us. And just an update on the two open park board seats. David Deeds and Tom Downing are no longer on the park board. And so there are interviews that are going on right now for open board and commission seats. And so we will be expecting 2 new park board members in March. That's it for my updates.
All right. Thank you very much, Ann. And seeing no other items on the agenda, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
There is a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. All those opposed. All right. Meeting adjourned.